right? Is everyone here a registered voter? If you don't vote, you have no right to complain. Are your children's registered voters? You can register your child to pre-register to vote at ages 16 and 17. So when they're 18 years of age, their voter registration card will come right to the house. It's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're registered to vote. It's incumbent upon us to get out there and let them know what we think and how we feel and how laws should be governed, because they govern to help govern the people and not individuals. So we want to support. We want to fight. The NAACP is in this fight for the long haul, and we will win. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Blue. Reverend Pointer, can you kind of share a little bit about what you're seeing at the community level, and give us a little bit about the reality check of what it's like ministering to a person who is struggling with end-of-life stuff as it relates to cancer and lung cancer, what it really looks like.
Let me thank everyone for giving your attention to this as an issue in our community. And let me first confess perhaps something that you don't know. I've been black my whole life. So I want you to be clear that I know and understand this in ways that we understand it as black people. I have smokers in my family. I grew up with smokers in my family. And as a pastor, I've spent the last 43 years walking with families through the multitude of illnesses that result from cigarette smoking. Let's be clear that Dr. Underwood hit it squarely on the head when he said the probability is not about you dying. It's about you living with a series of horrific conditions that are 100% preventable if you never take up a cigarette. The number of African Americans who suffer from cardiovascular and cerebral vascular disease, a direct correlation to the lifelong smoker that a lot of them are, could have been prevented if you never had cigarettes in our communities. And as a black boy, I can tell you these images that you're looking at on these posters, those boys are, those are two of my friends that as a 11-year-old conspired to buy a pack of Cools together and crawled up on the roof of the school and thought we couldn't be seen and lit up the cigarette, and I coughed profusely, and I decided then I put the cigarette out, and we had divided up the pack. You know, cigarettes came in packs of 20. We divided the pack up, and I gave them to 3 to one and 3 to the other and crawled down. And when I walked in the house, my grandmother said, "I'm going to get you because I saw you." And I was like, "Saw me what?" And she said, "Boy, don't play with me. You don't get to smoke because it's enough smokers in this family." And she said, "Give me that cigarette." And you know, I had made the mistake of putting the cigarette in my blue jeans pocket, the one that I put out. And Grandma sat me at the table, and you're going to think this was cruel or unnecessary, but it was useful because I don't smoke today, and I never smoked another cigarette. She said, "Eat it." Now, you all, ain't nothing you could do to Grandma. She been gone since 1988. But what it did for me was understand how critically unuseful tobacco is. Because tobacco, though people chew it, it's not useful for eating. And as a child, you know, you need some things that help you. And when you walk into one of the convenience stores or one of the neighborhood stores, the first thing you see is this advertisement for cigarettes. Those things mattered because all of those advertisements that I saw as a child mattered. They were no longer on television by then, but they were in the magazines. They were in Ebony. They were in Jet. They were in Esquire. They were in those magazines that came to our house every week. And so we got a chance to see those images. And as a child, you don't really understand the subliminal messages being sent to you because the advertising doesn't seem like it's for you. But the advertising is for our children. Walk into a 7-Eleven and tell me that that advertising that's on the front of the counter at the child's level is intended for you. You don't even notice it. But the child with you, whose hand you have, they can't help but see it. And it's brightly colored, it's wonderfully doctored images. That's the message being sent to our children, that they could be that image if they smoke. That's why we have to do this if we do it for no other reason. Adults who smoke menthol cigarettes, they'll go smoke another cigarette. But children need to be protected from ever taking cigarettes up, so that as pastors, we're not with families with someone with chronic emphysema. We're not with families because someone had a massive stroke or a massive heart attack or some other cardio event as a result of cigarettes, or we're not going back and forth with our family members to treatment at Roswell or cancer care of Western New York. Because those are the tracks that we can promise that people will be on as smokers. We know for sure that 1 in 3 smokers will die from smoking-related diseases and illnesses. Wow. We know that as a fact. Yes. There's no science that is disputed by the tobacco industry. None. And so we're applauding Governor Hochul's initiative to create a tobacco-free generation. Those are her words. And I need every one of you, especially those of you in the New York 141st, call your assembly member and tell her that you are squarely behind this and that you want this done in this legislative session as part of this budget that needs to be approved by Friday but won't. So you still have time. So tomorrow, pick up the phone and call your assemblyman, your assemblywoman, your senator, and let them know. And then call somebody else's assemblyman, senator, assemblywoman, and let them know. In Albany on Tuesday, Pastor Blue and I met with the entire Western New York delegation without regard to their political label. I don't really care. But they get a vote. So we said to them all the same thing. We need you to get behind the governor and to make sure this happens now. And then we'll come back for some other stuff.
Thank you. Ebony, do we have cards with the questions? Okay. So if you have a card to write down your question, because we want you to participate in this conversation. So whatever questions that you may have, we will do our very best to answer that question with the knowledge base that we have, okay? We're not going to make anything else. Okay. Dr. Hyland, let me just read this. What are the most persuasive arguments to use to encourage smokers you know to quit? Very good question. We have information and materials. If you have loved ones that are trying to quit, we have some things to help you have these conversations with your loved ones. So what's the best argument to get someone who quickly to quit?
It's a great question. I mean, in New York State, there's about 750,000 menthol cigarette smokers. So when this ban gets passed and it gets implemented, well, you know, on October 1st or whenever that date happens, there's going to be a lot of demand. A lot of people are going to be asking that question. And it can be different for different people, but I think first you have to make that decision that I'm going to quit. You know, I think most cigarette smokers regret that they started. We've done research, about 90% of cigarette smokers regret that they've started, but it's hard. And making that decision that today's the day, today's going to be the first day of my smoke-free life, and give it a shot. So that's the first thing, is making that initial decision. A second is, you know, manage your expectations. This is hard. You know, this is, some people say it's the hardest thing they'll ever do in their life, but there are millions of success stories out there. So that comes down to, you know, if you slip, you know, just like in the winter here in Buffalo, if you slip on the ice in November or December, you better get up, because it's going to be a long winter if that's where you stay in there. So trying to work it and just keep trying. And then trying to surround yourself with the support systems that you need. I know there's family support, social support, places like this, fantastic support. There's free resources too. So the New York State Smokers Quit Line is a free resource. There's some materials out there, free starter kits for medication to help get you over some of those rough patches. And then that persistence right there. But it really starts here, making that decision. It's different for different people. Who are you quitting for? For your grandkids, for yourself, wherever that is. But make that decision, and people are with you.
There's something about the chemicals in menthol to make it more difficult to quit?
Yeah, so studies show that cigarette smokers who use menthol cigarettes have a lower quit rate. And we just had some research that we presented, particularly African American menthol cigarette smokers do worse than Caucasian Americans that smoke cigarettes. So it's not exactly clear what that mechanism is, but there's some evidence. White people and black people get rid of nicotine differently. There's some genetic differences of how they do that, and that can influence the way nicotine uptakes, works with your brain, and when those cravings come. If you metabolize nicotine quickly, if your body uses it quickly, that's actually, your brain wants more, because the good stuff that it wants, the nicotine, isn't there so much. So that's what the menthol is, can accentuate that and kind of interact with those abilities. So bottom line, menthol cigarettes are harder to quit than regular cigarettes.
Next question, and this is, well, we'll do our best. So how will the menthol cigarette ban impact the Indian Reservation menthol cigarettes? Will these products be ineffective? So who understands the legislation? So from my understanding, you know, what happens that's sovereign land, right? So will this, I don't think this ban will be enforceable on sovereign land. Yes.
We're very fortunate to have Lisa Neff from the American Heart Association. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. My colleague, Brianna, is joining via the Facebook Live, and we're doing a little bit of phoning a friend with the Google Meet not working tonight. The bill will not impact reservations. So any of the policy items that are being proposed tonight in the ban on menthol will not impact tribal nations or any of the reservation lands. Okay? And I just want to thank and echo the speakers here this evening, because of the mention of the impact on cardiovascular disease is tremendous. Smoking continues to be the #1 modifiable risk for cardiovascular disease and death. And from the Heart Association perspective, please call your representatives, text, call, tweet, Facebook at them, whatever you can do. Contact your representatives and share your voice. So, thank you. Yes, the two bill numbers that you can reference with your representatives. In the Senate, it is S2441, and you can also just search for menthol in the search bar in the online system. And the Assembly bill is A3907. So again, in the Senate, it is S2441, and in the Assembly, A3907. Thank you.
And we'll put that, is there a way that we can put that on the screen? Those bill numbers? If not, I know Ebony must have wrote those down too, or somebody did, but we'll make sure we give you that information one more time. It says here the commercials are great and effective. Who is primarily responsible? We should acknowledge and encourage. So I think I know the answers. What the question is asking is the marketing, the commercials are good. They're good commercials. They're effective, right? Who's responsible for that? I think the movie kind of answered that, right? It's the big tobacco. They got lots of money, and if you have money, you can put on a very good marketing campaign, right? But don't overlook what Dr. Hyland said about there's a connection between the tobacco industry knows, because they know their product, right? They know that menthol is more addictive and harder to break. That's not there's not an argument against that. We know that. We also know that they target black and brown people. Let me walk that back to you again. This will answer your question about the why and how come. They know it's more addictive and harder to quit. They know that about their product. And they target black and brown people and the LGBTQ plus community. Do you get the picture? You can make an argument, sue me if you want to, I don't care, that the tobacco industry is guilty of genocide. If I had a product that I knew was more addictive and harder to quit, and the outcome would be many chronic diseases and just damage. If I operated with a white supremacist mentality, I would not target my own people. Let's just make it, let's cut through the BS and let's make it plain. They know it's more addictive. They know it's more damaging. They know it's harder to break. They know what it will do to your body. They'll know what it will do to your family. They'll know what it will do to your community. And without any remorse or any regard, not only does it be bad enough that they just targeted adults, but they target our children. Tobacco is one of the only products that if you use it properly, it will kill you and you will lose customers. You'll lose your best customers. So what do you got to do? You got to get new ones. You can't go to Forest Lawn and get new ones.
Pastor Nicholas?
Yes, Reverend Blue.
We're looking at legally, racially profiling.
Yes. Yes.
We're giving them a license to kill. Remember, on every pack of cigarettes, there's a placard. Warning, hazardous to your health, may cause cancer. It doesn't say it won't cause cancer. Again, as Pastor Nicholas stated, they can't disprove that this won't kill you. And why are we allowing our children to hang around this environment? We have to take them to school. We have to educate them. And we just heard through all of our series of doctors here that this messes with your brain. I just had an eye doctor's appointment. And one of the things that happened is they asked me some pre-questions. Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have cholesterol? Do you smoke? Because they tell me that it affects the blood vessels in my eye. So we're going to live with chronic diseases just because of menthol. How in the world are we going to raise a generation when we're killing them at the same time?
Thank you.
We got to be smart about this. We cannot allow them to legally, racially profile and commit genocide in our communities and stand by and say, hey, here's my child. We have to take this advertising off the market. We have to make sure that our children who are reading at younger ages are reading good stuff instead of bad stuff.
Thank you. Yep. So, and that answers the question somebody asked, why are we focusing on menthol cigarettes? Because menthol cigarettes is focusing on us. We just counterpunching. It's not that hard. I mean, we're making this complex because we're allowing all this other stuff into the equation. They ain't got nothing to do with anything. Let's just stay focused and stay here, right? Right? Just what does menthol cigarettes do to black folks? What does it do to everybody? What does it do to Latino people? What does it do to the gay and lesbian community? And it's focused on that. Stay on there. So that's the answer to that question. We got the black press. You know how much money? You know how much money Alnisa could be making if she let them tobacco people put their stuff in that paper? Call them right now. There's a moral responsibility to not advertise death. What kind of a human being would you be to promote something to a people and you knowing what it's going to do to them? This is a conscious choice that they're making, folks. This is real. They know. They know. And I bet you their kids don't smoke none of this stuff. I bet you that. Because they know what it'll do to you. So we got to, this is grown-up talk. And we can't, I don't know. Somebody asked, are there studies that are, Dr. Hyde, are there studies that talk about melanin and addiction to menthol? Has there been any studies on that? Melanin, the melanin in the pigmentation of people of African descent, and I'm talking to you like you're not a doctor, and a greater propensity to be addicted to menthol?
There's certainly, I mentioned the differences the way African Americans metabolize nicotine in there. So, so you do see those racial differences. They're just inherent. There's just part of the variability. So that component is there. So that, put a little differently, the experience of an African American with the chemical nicotine is going to be a little different experience than a Latino or Asian. So it does, so it introduces this issue of really trying to understand, what drives that, and then that menthol component kind of intersects. It's the two together that seem to be where we see the differences. So at the end of the day, African Americans that smoke menthol cigarettes have a harder time quitting. They have lower quit rates. And the flip side, places that have banned menthol cigarettes, so you had mentioned Canada, Netherlands. We've done studies in these countries, and what we found is that when you ban menthol cigarettes, the quit rates go up about 30%, so relative about 7 percentage points higher. And that will translate in the U.S. if there were a menthol cigarette ban, because we know the FDA is working on this, but we're not going to wait for the federal government. That was some advice that I got just today from one of my colleagues at the FDA. But that would yield about a million additional people to quit smoking, save hundreds of thousands of lives, disproportionately saving more black and brown lives because they smoke menthol cigarettes more. So when this ban happens, we can expect to see what we're experiencing now are lower quit rates, but we should expect that to flip around and to see higher quit rates. And so that's the experience that I would predict.
So what about the European Union? And menthol, and flavored tobaccos.
Yeah.
The EU.
Right. Yeah. So other places are doing this. The nuance there, though, is that the use rates of menthol in these other countries are pretty low. So the cigarette companies, it's I guess it's a flavor for everyone, but you don't see that kind of very targeted, what many would call predatory marketing to a specific community like we have experienced here in the United States.
So in Europe, the use rate of menthol is significantly lower.
Yes.
Just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. Another question. How can you quit smoking? We have information for you. We have so please get your packets. The tip line is, what's the tip line? Quit line, excuse me. What? 1-866 New York quits. Okay, so that's on there. So I mean, there's, yes.
Yep. So the free service. So the New York Quit Line. Tobacco users all over the state probably see ads on television. Yeah, I know the It's Not Just campaign is out there, but the New York Quit Line, you can call 1-866-NY-QUITS. You can text QUIT NOW to 333-888. You can go to the website, nysmokefree.com. There's trained tobacco treatment specialists that we help about 100 people every single day throughout the state with our quit smoking effort. Most people are eligible for free starter kits of nicotine replacement therapy, which can help take the edge off of some of the cravings that you get. Because when you first quit, your brain wants some of that nicotine, and the nicotine replacement therapy can help make it a little bit easier for you, and that's a free resource, and I think there are materials out there.
Yes, so we'll have materials here for you, and so we'll have that information. So I want to honor your time at 7:30 now. The last comment was, I think we've seen that commercial of the black man who is gasping for breath, and someone wrote that commercial was effective for them. That really touched them. So this is the beginning of the conversation, right? Stan, come on up. So the real leader for tonight's work was Stan Martin, and come on, let's encourage his heart. And so Stan, can you just real quickly, because we're past time, is what's our next steps on this work?
Thank you, Pastor. Let's give the panel and those participating online another round of applause. I think that we heard some call to actions tonight in terms of voting, in terms of also contact your local elected officials. Also, if you know someone who quit or who wants to quit in terms of smoking, encourage them to call the quit line. That's very important, 1-866-NY-QUITS, 1-866-NY-QUITS. That's very important. And we want to encourage you to have the conversation at the dinner table with your loved ones, with your family members, with your friends. It should not just stop here. okay? I just want to say this. I got involved in this fight 20 years ago. I know that's when I had the waves. You know what I'm saying? But just like Dr. Phil Gardner said, you know, I got in it for the long haul. And we are at the tipping point. We are at a tipping point where we can either bounce forward or we can bounce back. And I know one thing about Buffalo Strong, we bounce forward. We're about that. Okay, we're resilient. So let's make sure that this conversation, this information doesn't stay here, that we have conversations with our family members, our friends, our loved ones at every level so that we, all right, can make sure that the next generation of youth, our youth, have a healthy and prosperous community to live and to thrive in. Thank you all so much.
So I'll close with this. We're here because of love. That's why we're here. Because we love people. And I pray this. If you saw me walking down the street and walking in the street, and you saw a bus heading towards me, I pray that you would do all in your power to get me out of the way. I pray that you wouldn't have to consult with some politician and ask them for permission. This is about saving lives. And there's a fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves and those who represent our interest. Why was one of the biggest sponsors of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus R.J. Reynolds? That's where we are, folks. This is the reality that we're dealing with. We're letting our leaders be funded by the very people that are trying to wipe us out. And we can't let that continue to happen. So we're going to educate, love, try to get people to change their minds. But we're not going to be moved. So I thank you so much for spending some time with us. I hope you got your questions answered. If you don't, we're going to hang around a little bit as we go off the air. Make sure you get a packet of information in the that's in the room there. And just I thank you. Let's give our panel another round of applause. And stay encouraged. Oh, we got one more. Okay, we got a closing. How many minutes? Okay, 30-second video, and then you're released.
This is in response also to you may have seen some commercials that have been put out there by the New York State Department of Health. Also, the CDC has some tips campaigns that you're seeing. We also have a local commercial that we're airing here on WFO radio. We have some billboards and also some print media as well. So, without further ado, if you can go ahead and roll the clip. Will take us home. Go ahead, IT.
Menthol is not just in communities. It's aggressively marketed in Black communities. It's not just addicting. It's specifically addicting African Americans at higher rates. It's not just a flavor. It's a manipulative way for big tobacco to target us. And it's not just an injustice. It's dangerous. Smoking-related illnesses are the #1 cause of death in the African American community. And there's nothing just about it.